I wanted Gianna to mention the business of art because, of course, we had the storm the not storm a couple of weeks ago, and so in case there was any confusion, but it also relates very much to what we're going to be talking about today, which is jobs. Jobs is very much part of this picture, and how we prepare our workforce in order that we were able to sustain such an extraordinary creative economy here. So it felt very important and just timely, didn't it? We always start with a land acknowledgement. As an umbrella agency, Nevada County Arts Council acknowledges that the original inhabitants of territories now known as Nevada County continue to be home to indigenous peoples. Generations of Washoe and Nisenan tribal communities, east and west, shared boundaries with Maidu peoples and developed deep understandings of these lands. Through ceremony, culture, and stewardship, our indigenous peoples continue long-standing relationships with the land, as well as with water, air, plant, and animal beings. We are committed to understanding that the voices of our indigenous communities are primary voices, and to supporting their leadership towards a more just future for everyone. Anyone from Truckee in the room today? Yay, we have one person, this is amazing. We have an extraordinary panel who is going to be joining. We know that you've joined us, for the most part during your very, very busy days. We had such a surprise about a week ago when Randy called me from Washington, D.C. At this time of year is very busy for Americans for the Arts as it rolls out its national study of the economic impact of the creative sector within, on a national level. And to be able to let us know that he could squeeze us in was fantastic. It's amazing. We were going to be presenting these numbers, this data and this story in April, which is the start of Arts, Culture and Creativity Month across California and under proclamation by the County of Nevada here in Nevada County as well. We wanted to call out that particularly local proclamation because it's just one more example of how our county partners with us. So that's really super. We have some very wonderful supporters of the arts in the room today. We have a combination of local government, our treasured arts community. Some of our most important leaders are here with us in the room. And we also have our merchants. Hands up, merchants in the room. Any local businesses? Yay! Great. So as you know, our California Cultural District model that has been given to us by the state of California requires that the arts and local government and local business all work together. So it's super that we have one business in the room. In fact, I think we're all businesses. We just may not be defining ourselves as that in this moment. I want to particularly call out our local arts organizations. This was a year-long journey. As Randy will tell you, we were attending events and surveying our arts organizations across all 4 seasons, and in all manner of ways, using the surveys that were lent to us, the methodology lent to us by Americans for the Arts. And our arts organizations were so patient. This is the second longitudinal study that we have done of our creative sector here in Nevada County, and our arts organizations were there with us every step of the way. We have In Concert Sierra here today. We have the Miners Foundry. We have the Center for the Arts. Who else do we have with us today? Music in the Mountains, yay! That is Hillary, who is here representing Music in the Mountains, not the city of Grass Valley today. And we also have Community Asian Theatre of the Sierra. We have Jeannie Woods, and Jeannie sits on our board of directors. We're so grateful for you, Jeannie. One small housekeeping, and again, another indication of our growing relationship with our county government. Art in Public Spaces, our latest exhibition, celebrating the 30th anniversary of Community Asian Theatre of the Sierra, is up for another at least 2 weeks. Please get up to the Rood Center. It's glorious. We open our next exhibition at the Rood Center with the county on the 4th of April, right at the beginning of Arts, Culture and Creativity Month. And that's an exhibition that's been curated by Jenny Hale. And it's like the next generation of Project Wild Edges. What does it mean to be in nature? So we hope you'll join us for that. Okay, Randy, come on up here. Meet Randy Cohen, Vice President of Research and Policy at Americans for the Arts, who's literally just got off a plane. Randy, I'm going to just pass this to you.
All right, thank you very much.
Test. I'm actually going to go for the lighter mic. So I am with Americans for the Arts in Washington, D.C. We are a national organization. We've been around since 1960, and we work to make sure everyone in our communities, everyone in this country's got the opportunity to participate, to engage in the arts, to make the arts and culture part of their lives, to make sure every child's receiving a quality arts education. And we do that nationally. We also do that with our state and our local partners, the Arts Council, one of our great longtime members and partners and research study partners. So I am so happy to be back. Actually, I've been in DC a long time, but I am a California boy, so thank goodness I'm happy to be back. You know, always great to be out of Washington, you know, a place where nobody's encumbered by the facts these days. But we've got a good news story to talk about, and we're going to expand the way we think about arts and culture in our communities, right? We all love the arts. They inspire us, and, you know, they create more livable communities and, you know, make us feel creative. But the fact is, arts and culture organizations are also businesses, and they've got an economic impact on our community. They support jobs. They generate revenue that government needs, you know, to fund the rest of all their services. So, and we've got really amazing numbers to talk about that are very local right here in Nevada County. But before we talk about that story, I just want to briefly tell another story and acknowledge and appreciate everyone from the arts community and people who support the arts community and people who attend and patronize the arts community, because you are what makes this a great cultural community. And make no mistake, this is my 65th city I've spoken in since October, so I've been around a bit, and this is a wonderful arts and culture community. If you're an arts and culture omnivore, this is a great place to be. You got visual, you got performing, you got festivals, and the numbers are going to underscore that as well. But we also know, man, the last couple of years, pretty rough for the arts, right? You know, this pandemic, and the arts, you know, are still kind of working their way out of the pandemic, you know, truth be told. But the pandemic was devastating for arts and culture industry. That's been the hardest in generations. The 99% of arts organizations in this country during the pandemic had to cancel performances, suspend operations, close. A lot of them never even reopened. Johns Hopkins University, they track employment at all nonprofits in this country. It's about 1.6 million nonprofit organizations in the United States, 110,000 of them arts and culture organizations. Arts nonprofits lost jobs at 5 times the rate of all nonprofits. And frankly, a lot of them were reopened, we're back in business, still trying to work those jobs back though. So if you're an arts leader in the community and like you're feeling tired, that might be one reason why. So we're doing the work, we haven't brought all the people back yet. And then no less than the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. That's a federal agency, a Department of Commerce in Washington, D.C., top economic shop on the planet. They did a big study analyzing the impact of the pandemic on the nation's economy. And of course, you know, they look at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of industries. And they, you know, they talked about tourism and lodging, you know, as really hard hit industries. And seeing a few heads nod, you know, right? A lot of us felt that around here. But they called out the arts, especially as the performing arts, as one of, like, look out below, the most negatively impacted industries. So it's been a tough go for the arts, and they're coming back. Interestingly, there was one indicator, though, that was crazy upward during the pandemic, and that was people making art personally, personal creation in the arts. I do a big national public opinion survey every couple of years, the largest one out there. Last summer, 37% of the American population said, yeah, I tried some kind of new arts, culture, music, creative, culinary, activity during the pandemic. Do you read like Amazon was writing about this crazy spike in ukulele sales, and how many loaves of sourdough bread were left on your doorstep the last couple years. So people were really getting involved in the arts. I don't know, anybody try anything new during the pandemic? All right, yeah, excellent. So I myself took up knitting. I'd always wanted to try it. My grandmother, my aunts, they always knit, and I love the clickety clack of the needles. And after I'd watched everything on Hulu and Netflix, I didn't want to get off the couch, but I thought better do something else here. And so I thought, well, now's the time. And I ordered the supplies. A neighbor taught me how to do it, and I got to tell you, just sort of reflecting back on the pandemic and the uncertainty. It was so meditative, and it was really mitigated a lot of the stress and anxiety of the pandemic. And in fact, there's research now that looked at people's participation in the arts during the pandemic, and folks who did some kind of arts culture, and like creative expressive, it could be gardening, culinary, creative expressive work during the pandemic, better mental health. Lower rates of depression, lower rates of anxiety, higher rates of life satisfaction. And that actually just continues a long line. We hear a lot now about mental health, and the arts are right there to help improve that. I'm not that good of a knitter. I make like the world's longest scarves, But when it was time to get out of the house again, it's like finally, right, we got to do something. I'm in the D.C. area, and my wife and I were like, all right, well, what should we do? And, we got all those museums. And we thought, well, let's go to a museum. Seems like a nice, safe entry. And now that I am a fiber artist, thank you. That's a lifeline. Bring it, people. But we've got a great textile museum in Washington, D.C. And I was like, let's try the textile museum. We'd never been there. So what do? We went online, we found their website, and they were open, yay, in their hours, and this was their safety protocol. Wear a mask, keep your distance. And so we read about, a couple of the exhibitions they had, and that sounded great. So we clicked the button, pulled out the credit card, bought a couple of tickets, right? shopped online. And so we were all set to go. Saturday comes, we jump in the car, we drive downtown, park in a parking garage, give my guy, the guy $10, get my stub. And then on the way to the museum, what did we do first? We stopped and had a meal. Isn't that something we do, right? Dinner and a show. A lot of times when people have an arts and culture experience, you make an event out of it, and that's what we did. And there's a wonderful restaurant in the D.C. area downtown there. It's called Founding Farmers, and it's farm to fork. And yeah, I'm seeing some heads nod, and everything's grown within 50 miles. It was fabulous. Spent about $70. It was not a cheap lunch, but we just took our time, and it was lovely. And then from there, it was off to the museum. Walked about a half dozen blocks, and it's got beautiful architecture, and we went in and we got our program. And I can tell you, my first sensory experience there was actually not like, oh my God, the awe of a 1,000-year-old tapestry or an incredible quilt display. It was the air conditioning, because this was August in Washington, D.C., and it was like 1,000,000 degrees outside. I got oh my God, already I love this place. So, and then, we spent the next couple hours, and we heard a talk from a curator, and we explored the exhibits and everything. And so just sort of pause there a second, and kind of rewind the tape a little and go back to the start of all this. Think of all the industries that have been touched just related to this one afternoon event out to a museum. Well, it started when we went online. Arts organizations have websites, and that means they've got web designers, and they've got programmers, and there's photography and writing, and so that means there's those industries are being paid to populate that site. And we bought our tickets online, right? So now you got some of the finance and the e-commerce people. They're seeing a little bit of the action. Then it was off to downtown, and I could tell you where that parking garage is. During the week, you can't get a spot. It's like, that's Washington, D.C. right there in action. During the weekend, if it wasn't for those arts organizations, I'm sure it would be closed, because there is just nothing else going on down there. That guy that gave me the stub, that's a job. Those companies that own and manage that parking garage, those are local businesses. And then it was off to the restaurant, $70. So some of those dollars are going to the local growers and producers of the food. There's a trucking company that delivers it every morning. The waiter's bringing home some personal income. The owner of the restaurant, some entrepreneurial income. So there's all of that business that's happening. Now, finally, we get to, the museum. Finally shows up here at the end of the story. And we walk in. You ever notice when you go to an arts event, geez, even today, you're always getting paper, right? Well, that means there's a graphic artist that's paid to design those programs. Printers make bank off the arts. You just add up all the printing budgets for arts organizations. It's always glossy coated paper, it's color, thousands and thousands of units. And I don't know what their utility bill is at that, but our big arts centers are museums. I mean, keeping that place cool in the summer and warm in the winter. So those are jobs, and that's an industry in the community. When people think about the arts as an industry, if they do, it's usually when they see that performance or a lecture by the curator. But the fact is, arts organizations employ more than just musicians and actors and curators. They have electricians and plumbers, and we all got accountants and auditors, and there's security staff and marketing people and box office people. Arts and culture organizations employ a range of industries across the community. And so that's what this whole arts and economic prosperity study is about, that we're going to talk about here. The economic and social impact of the nonprofit arts and culture industry right here in Nevada County. So spending by the organizations, and plus that event-related spending by arts audiences. That makes sense, what we're doing? All right, so let's just talk about the study a little bit. Nevada County, one of 373 regions across the country. Everybody catch that technical effect? That was all me. We study communities, so we're in all 50 states and Puerto Rico. Communities as small as 4,000 people, as large as 4 million people. If the arts are happening in a community, economic impact is happening there as well. All right, couple things about the study. First, we focus on nonprofit arts and culture organizations. And so that means actually a little bit when he's doing that Washington, D.C. thing with his fingers. Nonprofit. What's he hiding? So yes, our nonprofit organizations, but it also might include a municipally owned arts center or a state-owned museum. A lot of times in some communities, underserved, smaller communities, it might be a faith-based organization or a library that's providing, the connection of artists and culture to the people. So we would include those programs as well. We don't take the whole library budget, but just that arts program, right? Here's what's not included. Commercial galleries, Hollywood motion picture industry, architecture firms, the university drama department. Those are all really important parts of the arts industry, but not part of this study. And why is that? Because when our city, county, state invests in the arts, that's typically where those dollars are going, to those nonprofit organizations. And it's an appropriate question to ask. I pay my taxes. What's the ROI on that investment, right? Cultural benefits, sure, we could stipulate that. But what else you got? And those are economic benefits. So we focus on nonprofit. We take a really reliable, rigorous approach to economic impact. We work with a team of economists. We use an IMPLAN platform, it's the system that about 1,000 cities in the United States subscribe to. So, and what it enables us to do is customize an input-output analysis model for every single community that we study. Each one of those dots has their own economic model. And we do that because $50 spent here in Nevada County is going to have a different economic impact than $50 spent in Sacramento, than $50 spent in San Francisco, on and on. Very localized, very rigorous methodology. It actually takes 1 million calculations just to come up with the findings right here for Nevada County. So nonprofit, reliable, and we take a conservative approach. The data I'm going to talk about are based on 127 responding organizations. So the Arts Council did a great job, and thank you all in here for participating. But that was only about 2/3 of the organizations that were surveyed. We only use data from the organizations that provide it. We don't make estimates for non-respondents. So what that means is we could put our hands all over these dollars, and there's still more out there. Still more little heads, room out there for of more economic impact. All right, so that's what we did, right? What did we find out? Arts and culture in Nevada County, $66 million of economic activity. And this is in 2022, by the way, right? A year where the arts were still working their way out of that pandemic. And that figure is composed of two numbers. First, spending by those 127 organizations. That $31.9 million. And that right there is a myth buster, because we all love the arts, right? All the wonderful things they do for us. But the fact is, they're businesses. They employ people locally. They purchase goods and services from other businesses in the community. They are members of the Chamber of Commerce. They help market and promote the regions and drive tourism. They're good business citizens. Now, like any business, they've got an economic impact. No surprise. So does the dog catcher's office. So does the gas station. I can give you a $5 bill and my economist will chase you around. I saw what he did with it. I ran it through the models. I saw the impact of that. So, but few industries generate the kind of event-related spending that the arts do, right? And that's dinner and, and parking and babysitting and all of that. $34.1 million in audience spending. So you add it all up, that's how we get $66 million. All right, what's the economic impact of that? Well, the first thing we look at is jobs. 1,359 jobs supported as a result of that economic activity, right? Yeah, well, yes, at any given moment on any day, there are 1,359 people employed. Slightly different than FTEs now, but pretty close. So and remember, though, these are jobs not just at arts organizations and not even just artists, right? These are jobs in industries across the community. Plus, you've also got the hospitality industry right there, right? And we'll show some numbers about that. So, and a little something else about arts jobs, these are necessarily local jobs. This is not an industry that's going to be offshored or run, taken out of town, because our arts organizations, they need the performers in the room. They need the curators hanging the art, the arts, educators in the schools, the arts therapists in the hospitals. These are local jobs. Bottom line, arts, not just food for the soul, putting food on the table for 1,359 households right here in the county. What else do we look at? Government revenue, $13.2 million in local, state, and federal government revenue. And what this, a lot of people, we fund the arts and people think, oh, that's great, we do it when we can. But they think of it sort of as this one-way train ride out of town. And what this shows is, no, it's actually an investment, because those dollars come back to government. Small investment, big returns. That's the arts. When we fund the arts, we're getting all of this impact. All right, let's start to drill down a little bit here this is really where the value add aspect of the arts is, and that is that audience spending. So the Arts Council did an amazing job collecting nearly 1,100 audience surveys across the county at a whole range of events, performing, visual, free, pricey, to get a representative sample. And the typical attendee at an arts and culture event spends $42.36 per person per event, not including the cost of admission. So you look at these pieces of the pie, not one of those pieces are admission. Right, and so, that was my lunch, right? Expensive lunch, local transportation, that was our parking, and So you might be looking at like, wow, can you still get a room for $8.59? Yeah, right. And would you want it if you could get it? No, you wouldn't. Remember, not everyone's got a lodging cost. Nobody's going to trust their kids to a babysitter for 60 cents. But oh my God, if it was only that cheap. These are averages, right? Other is always fascinating. Nationally, we did 224,000 audience surveys. Crazy sample, right? One of my favorite others, and let me tell you, get some really interesting responses, but there was a farmer in Wisconsin who paid somebody $60 to milk his cows so he could go to the theater that night. Isn't that great? People are doing what it takes to get to the arts. Of course, now I'll have to add dairy to the survey next time, I guess. But in addition to how much did you spend related to this arts event, we also asked folks for their zip code, because we want to find out, do they live in Nevada County, which would make them local, or are they from outside of the county? 34%, more than 1 in 3 attendees came from outside the county. And do they spend differently? Yeah, you bet they do. $73.34 per person per event. We asked those non-local people who spend more than $73 another question, which was, why are you here? We're glad you're here. Thanks for coming. Are you here on business? Are you here visiting friends and family? 2 very common reasons people travel, right? 75%, exactly, that's not a rounded figure, 75% said, we came specifically for this arts event. So now you could really see the pulling power of the arts, right? So people are coming. And if you're a local merchant, and I love, Eliza, you raised the hands, you love this vibrant arts community. Just those responding organizations, 806,000 attendees over the course of the year. Every time spending all that money at local businesses. And just a little context, by the way. I mean, we've got all these numbers. This figure nationally was $38. So we're ahead of the national average. This figure, non-local, 30% nationally. This figure, $60. So a lot of economic activity and more than the national average. And in fact, that total $66 million figure, that was well ahead of the median of the population group. We had about 60 communities in the 50 to 100,000 ranking. So remember I talked about, the numbers will underscore our creative, culturally vibrant community here. That's how it happens. And this number, 75%, that's right about with the national average. So strong numbers. All right. We asked a couple other questions in this of those attendees, because let's face it, when we might be planning what we're going to do this weekend, it's like, oh, well, we got 3 wonderful cultural possibilities. Which one's got the best economic impact? We'll do that. That's probably not part of the decision-making tree, right? Rather, it's probably more like something like this, where you've got in the 80s of percentiles. This arts and culture event is a source of pride and community identity. I'd feel a sense of loss if this event or this venue were no longer available. And I think one of the most interesting ones at the bottom there, 85% said, it's important to me that this be available for future generations. And what that says to me is that arts, when we have, an arts and culture experience, it's more than a one-time transactional moment, but rather arts and culture, it's our history, our heritage. It's the story of our community. It's where we've been. It's where we are. It's where we're going. And we see this with local attendees, non-local attendees right here in the region. One of the things we did in this study is nationally is we really tried to dive into what in the past studies have been underrepresented organizations and communities in the previous 5 arts and economic prosperity studies. And so we did focused on surveys of arts and culture organizations serving underserved communities of color, BIPOC arts organizations themselves, Black, Indigenous, people of color. And the findings are fascinating. So there's a lot of data on this. And by the way, actually, you have a copy of the report. You can download the full report. But I'm just sort of hitting some highlights here. So these are the numbers I just showed you, right? 1,091 interviews, and all these in the 80s. Look, almost identical numbers to attendees at the BIPOC events, at arts attendees at, in communities serving communities of color. And we actually even saw similar findings with the spending data, about $39 versus 43. Thank you. Right, $42.36. So anyway, but that was close. Yeah, you rounded up. So this is one of these conversations actually for the next community meeting. Sometimes data and research, it's not the end of the conversation, it's the beginning of the conversation, because what I see nationally and what other research studies have shown and what the California Arts Council's analysis of its own grant making is that arts organizations serving communities of color, BIPOC organizations like, the Black Theater of, fill in the city, are not doing well as well and competing well in government and private sector funding. So yet the research shows, in terms of the community anyway, and attendees, similar economic impact, similar social impact. So what's the disconnect there? And so that's a conversation for the future, but a really interesting one where the data, again, can really promote a next conversation. All right, what else did we look at? We asked those organizations about volunteerism. I love this slide, this data. I mean, it's the volunteer army that keeps our arts and culture organizations making the arts accessible to the community and also helping create this whole economic impact. Just those responding organizations, 9,182 volunteers that contribute over 273,000 hours. I mean, that's huge, right? And since we're commodifying everything today, right? So the independent sector actually puts the average volunteer hour in California, any volunteer hour, $37.32. So you do the math, that's a $10.2 million value. Now that's not part of the $66 million that I talked about, right? Because no dollars are really changing hands here, but that is a lot of community impact. So more to read on that. Another feature of this report, so I'm in the DC area, as many of you know. DC is the land of national organizations. There's so many national organizations in DC. There's actually a national organization for the national organizations. You can't make this up, but you can make this work for you, though. So look at some of the partners on this study, and when you download and look at the reports, you'll see their names, and they're part of this. The U.S. Conference of Mayors, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, National League of Cities. That's where a lot of our mayors get together and have their meetings a couple times a year. National Association of Counties. Our county administrators, our supervisors, they just had a big meeting in D.C. a couple Sundays ago. I was speaking to 100 county leaders talking about economic impact in the room. My 20-minute presentation turned into 45 minutes. They had so many questions about the economy, and then that went into 21st century workforce and arts education and mental health. Of course, the arts touch on all of these things. And then maybe you're from the business community. Well, you pay attention to what the conference board's, reporting about. That's the National Organization for Big Business, Tourism, and Destinations International. Community development organizations like Grace Forward, all national partners on your study because one, they too believe arts, culture, fundamental component of a healthy community, and two, they buy into the methodology and they buy into the results. Trust me, they thought this thing was going to stink down the road. They're not going to get anywhere near it. So if you're an elected leader, you're a community, a business leader, you can feel really confident about making decisions based on these data. Interestingly, not only do they get it, the American public gets this as well. Back to my big national public opinion survey, that social impact, that was just Nevada County. Now this is all national again. 86% of the American population says, yeah, the arts improve livability of the communities there. That's no surprise. 79%, however, say the arts are good for jobs. Arts are good for the economy and for local businesses. The thing is, it's not an intuitive way to think about the arts, but when we put that out there, it registers for people, right? They're looking at that, $43 and 41. Oh man, now I'm confused. The individual audience spending figure. Here's another interesting thing about this. Both of these percentages are higher than the percentage of the population that actually attends the arts. So a lot of people value the arts, even if they don't go, and so, they're like, yeah, well, I may not go to my museum, but man, when my mother visits, thank God it's there, right? All right, we're getting ready to wrap up here. I'm starting to see the stand-up and the hook. Let me go to this slide right here and wrap up. So what you're looking at here is a picture from the Louvre, 1913, bad news out of Paris. The Mona Lisa got stolen. Took them 2 years to get it back. But in the 2 years the Mona Lisa was missing, more people went to see where it had been hanging than saw, where this is going, than saw the painting itself in the previous 14 years. It's so easy to take arts and culture for granted, to assume it's always going to be there. We've all got a job to do. We got to encourage government funding of the arts. If we're a business, we can support, we can sponsor the arts. When you make your contributions to the community, and all your nonprofits, remember the arts organizations and really attend. Just attend the arts, right? You can just support the arts with your feet. Everything you do to advance the arts is important. You're important for doing it. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Randy,
All right.
Thank you so much. And don't think you're getting away lightly. I'm going to be introducing our panel. And we're going to be having, this isn't just a prop. This is a really fancy bottle of champagne, and we have lots of them. We're going to do a toast. I'm from Europe. We do this in the middle of the day sometimes. I have some wonderful colleagues with me today, Michaelin and Heather and Kelly. Kelly, you're sitting up front with us, but it would be sweet to start sort of pouring. We're going to do a toast to the arts. Would you like that? Would that be nice? Yay, great. So don't go away without this. Okay, right, we're going to have a brief conversation with some amazing community leaders. Kimberly Parker, Economic Development of the county, come on up and sit next to me here. And then, would you help me, Randy? We'll just pull these a little closer, but not so much that you're blinded by the blue light. Wonderful, wonderful. And you're going to sit here, sweet. I think it would be nice to have the actual back slide on, so we can keep that on. Yeah. Yeah, we just need a little space in the middle. That's fine, as long as Randy isn't blinded. And then I'd love to invite John Blinder, who's our board president at Nevada County Arts Council, and Kelly Cutler, our first ever Truckee Cultural District program manager. Come on up. And Gil, where are you? Where's Gil?
Test.
Gil Matthew, Executive Director of Nevada County Economic Resource Council. Come on up. You're in the hot seat. So Kimberly and Kelly and Gil haven't had much time to prepare for this panel. We haven't had much time to prepare for Randy. We're just so delighted. So with that in mind, and because, Gil, you have the other mic in your hand, I might say to you, any aha moments today? Is this surprising to you, these numbers?
Let me make sure this is on. Is it on? Okay. Well,
You can hear?
the first thing I'd like to say is you can believe whatever he says because just look at his socks. Huh? Okay, those are art socks. It's a man who walks the walk. Thank you. In terms of an aha, no, because we got a little preview of this the other day at the Nevada County Economic Resource Council's board meeting, so we've had a chance to sort of look at this a little bit. The aha is not particularly the numbers, because as an economist, I love the numbers, but for me, the arts represent a much richer reason to have it in your community, and that's mental health. And you can translate mental health into a lot of dollars. How many people, what's the absentee rate without the arts, those kinds of things. So that's a component that I don't know that you can measure very well, but it would be a component about that I would like to see some. Thank you.
Great. And when we were with you last week, when I scheduled time to present to the ERC's Board of Directors last week, I hadn't realized that Randy would be with us this week. Otherwise, I never would have spilled the beans. So the Board of Directors and Kimberly and others had some numbers to be teased with. And luckily, because Randy was coming this week, I was able to say, ask Randy when a difficult question about things like multipliers and input-output models. In fact, I wonder if you'd speak to that, Randy. I talked to you about multipliers this morning, and you said we don't use them. What do you mean by that?
Right. Well, so economic activity multipliers, for a lot of years, when people were trying to demonstrate economic impact, they'd use like a number like 3. And so you take the $31.9 million of spending by those arts organizations and you multiply it by a number that's almost too big, always, and say, wow, that means it's got $100 million economic impact in the community. And I think, in the 80s and maybe into the 90s, that got a lot of traction. But remember those organizations I was showing up there, U.S. Conference of Mayors, League of Cities, National Association of Counties? They've since been training their members, like, beware of that, because it's usually based on big rounded averages and, it doesn't provide the specifics that you need. What they say is, look for something that talks about jobs, household income, government revenue, because to come up with those figures, you got to do some real economic modeling. You got to bring in the economists and look at how, the local, state, wage, labor, commerce data all go into that. And so those are the input-output analysis. Those are the economic models. And so a lot of times people ask, where's the multiplier? Well, we don't really use one. We do it this way because that's what the people who we're trying to get to, who's, the elected leaders, we're trying to help them see the value. But if it's not credible, then they're not going to see the value. So we take an approach that's credible for them.
Thank you so much.
How did that sound? You're the the trained economist there.
I totally agree with that, although there is a multiplier effect.
Yes.
To an extent. We can argue about the number, but there is an impact.
I'd like to pass my mic to Kimberly because you're a bit of a hero at the moment, and you're such a target. You have an office at the county, and you're the first ever formal person fulfilling that function at the County of Nevada. Listening to all this today and recognizing that you really haven't had time to sort of absorb the numbers. Each of you received the full report. It's on our website. If you go to our website, hello, Gretchen. 2 Gretchens literally sitting in front of one another. It's all there on the website. Kimberly, any aha moments for you today and any questions for Randy?
Sure. Let me just start off by saying that for those of you that don't know, I am the Economic Development Office at Nevada County that just formed about 18 months ago. But for what you might not know about me, because a lot of you even know me before that, is I have a long arts background. I was a performing arts major in college. I taught theater arts in high school as one of my first careers. When I moved to the Sacramento area, kind of cultural, maybe more specific than arts, but I worked for a decade at the Sacramento Zoo, and we actually introduced art and sculpture into the zoo at that time. And I worked at the Crocker Art Museum. So I have a deep love for art. And so it was very exciting when I came to the county to be able to have conversations. And I just want to say that I hope this community realizes how lucky and how special we are. There are so many places that have a arts culture that don't have the kind of economic impact information that we now have, not just for the first time. And so I really commend Eliza, the Arts Council, the arts community, for saying that this is important. We know that it is a huge economic sector. We know that it is an important part of the vibrancy of our life. Within the county, for those of you that don't know, one of my roles is tourism. And I also am involved with Gil in what's called California Jobs First. And part of that is we're starting to get data from the Brookings Institute back. And part of that data that we're getting, which, I don't know, Gil, maybe you'll disagree with me, but it surprised us, I think, a little bit, is they gave us data back about what our clusters are of, opportunity in our county. And all along, and this is nothing against food and egg, but all along I was told it's going to be food and egg, it's going to be food and egg, And food and egg is very important to our community. But actually what came back as one of the very top opportunities for Nevada County is tourism. And under tourism is clustered, of course, arts and culture. And so to me that was really eye-opening and really important, although I felt it in my heart. And I felt that it was true for our community to kind of have that come back and be acknowledged, through data was really helpful. There's also, if you had a chance to be at the the board meeting yesterday, there's a presentation by Sierra Business Council on what's called the CEDS, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. And what was really exciting about that is SBC's strategic work over a 4-county region to help set what that region's platform around economic development should be going forward. And arts and culture were aligned in that study. I think even within the county, if I'm being fair in our comments about, things that are really moving forward in a way they haven't before. The Art and Public Spaces program, first year that the county really had that kind of engagement and involvement. They've had art up at the county, don't get me wrong. Right now there's an incredible student exhibit up there. If you haven't seen that, it's amazing to see what our young people are doing, so please go up there. But this is a concerted effort with art and art work within the county itself. And then finally, I'll just say that I'm really excited by the fact that I didn't expect when I took this particular job how much I would be working on arts-related project and with our nonprofit community in general. And I would probably tell you that 1/3 of the contacts and the calls I make have to do with something that is related to culture, to arts, to tourism, to production of something that would be considered a craft, et cetera. And so for me, that's very exciting. I think the one question, Randy, if I can ask, I wrote myself a note here. It has to do with the relationship of the 1,359 employees. I'm just curious if that was drilled down, and there's a reason I'm asking this, because as we know, with so many of our sector work, a lot of the challenge on it ties back to issues that are much bigger that can't be solved by a single entity. For, in this particular case, housing, I would just say. Affordable housing, workforce housing is a tremendous issue. It touches every corner. But I think a lot of the people that work in our arts organizations, they potentially may not all be the highest paid employees that live in our county. And what we're finding more and more is a struggle with employees being able to afford to live in our county. Of the 1,359 jobs that you kind of identified, was there any work done to see whether those individuals lived in or outside the county?
No, we don't have that data.
Yeah, I think it'd be
Great
interesting.
question.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to know, because my gut is telling me that there's a lot of people working in the arts here who would love to live in our county, but they're coming into work in our county and cannot afford that. And so I think that's really something to have conversation about in the future. So that's my long-winded answer to everything.
It's a very good question. So many folks, especially in the eastern part of the county as well, people that you and I work with in Truckee, they live in Reno and come in. On the other hand, they're not necessarily part of this study. So Kelly and John, in a moment I'm going to ask you, because I introduced John as president of the board of directors, and of course we all know him as an unbelievable, long-standing advocate and board-level volunteer for many different entities, or at least 2 key entities. But also you're a leader in commercial real estate brokerage, so I'm going to turn to you in a moment. We don't have that much time. I did just want to introduce Kelly as our first ever California Cultural District Program Lead for Truckee. Kelly, we're just going into a master planning process to create the county's first ever pan-county arts and culture master plan. How does all this information tie in for you with that?
Thank you, Eliza. I also wanted to mention that I'm here wearing my Truckee Chamber Board hat as well. So I just wanted to share with you, and I really appreciate these numbers. They're incredibly impressive. And what numbers do, what statistics do, is they legitimize this industry, and they also give us arts administrators leverage in our advocacy work. So this is really juicy stuff for us to be going to our Truckee Cultural District partners with, which include the town of Truckee, the Truckee Chamber, the Truckee Downtown Merchants Association, and the Truckee Arts Alliance. Eliza and I are going to be going before our Truckee Town Council on March 26th to share some of these numbers with them, and that creates leverage in our community and with our town municipalities and leadership. Back to Eliza's question about how this really sets the stage going into a really important arts and culture master planning process within Nevada County, and specifically our 2 cultural districts. My counterpart, Heather Heckler, is here as well she's in the back, Grass Valley, Nevada City Cultural District. I'm going to share a conversation I had yesterday with a consultant in New York. The consulting firm was AEA Consulting, and we talked a little bit about setting the stage and going into an arts and culture master planning process. And in describing this presentation, which Randy delivered this morning, and the information statistics that we were getting, the fact that we have really strong partnerships already through our cultural districts, and we know who our stakeholders are, and some of you, or all of you actually, are sitting in the room, really sets the stage nicely for an arts and culture master plan. We've done a lot of that hard framework, and it is actually going to potentially reduce that process by 3 months. And we've estimated about a 6 to 9 month process, but we know that time is money, and that the work that has been done through this AEP6 is really critical as we launch into this next critical moment within our cultural districts, which is the Arts and Culture Master Plan.
Thank you so much. And I think most of you know that our cultural districts are under state designation. There are only 14 across the entire state. Most of them are based in urban or suburban spaces. There are only 4 rural California cultural districts. 2 of them are right here in Nevada County. We have 4.5 more years of state designation. It's a very competitive thing. We have to report every year. We have to reapply. And as time goes by, we'll most likely be reapplying next to first-time applicants from many other districts. So we want to be as competitive as possible. And part of that is having a plan which will show that we have done the work to be self-reflective and include our community, and it'll be a bottom-up process. So that sounds slightly wrong, but you know what I mean. Sort of a ground up, from the trenches, like working with stakeholders, having focus groups across our sectors, and also importantly, working on very important intersectorial issues that the county and the cities and the town are grappling with, such as affordable housing, public health, environmental issues, disaster preparedness, emergency response. All these things are very important, and we know that artists are more and more engaged on the front lines as second responders. Our just one project Nevada County Arts Council works with at the moment, the California Creative Corps, sees us putting to work 450 artists across 19 counties with 22 languages spoken, all in order to create campaigns of awareness for these issues such as affordable housing and unhoused and public health. John, just quickly, and we're going to turn it over to you in a moment so you can ask a few questions. We know that most folks have to get back to their day by day. As a commercial real estate broker, what does this report mean to you? Do you have any more questions for Randy? And what do people coming to you seeking property and advice on property need to know, and what do they care about?
Well, it's a little more of an amorphous answer to that question, and I probably prefer to answer the other question you had prepared me to answer. But I will say that what impacts the commercial real estate industry impacts the residential real estate industry and impacts everybody else. It's that this community is not just a simple mountain community with some pretty places to go visit and a beautiful river to go play in during the summertime. This is a real option from the city and more urban areas that are easily more dense with their artists and their arts presentations and performing arts. And I think that one of the things that is so evident in Nevada County is that we have something that not many small towns and small communities, particularly rural communities, have. And I think that sets us apart. So that sets us apart for people wanting to potentially bring their businesses here, for people wanting to stay here, for kids that grew up here and cut their teeth someplace else but wanted to come back here because it really provides a full life for anybody that tries hard enough to go out and see what we have and what's out there. But the other question you had prepped me for was, what motivated Nevada County Arts Council to fund this study? And that's really clear to me from the first moments that I was part of the opening of the Center for the Arts 25, 26, 27 years ago. I would go down to the local restaurants, like Sereno's at that time, and I would see the faces of the people in the restaurant that seemed to be very busy. And then I would go back up to the center and take tickets when the show was about to start. And because I used to be in the restaurant business, faces are pretty familiar for me. I used to notice these are all the same people that are coming in there. And then I would go back to Jerry Sereno and I would say, hey, Jerry, are you aware that all these people that came to your restaurant came to the Center for the Arts after that? And he goes, well, not really. I go, well, would you like our schedule so you can staff your restaurant properly so that you don't get inundated and have lousy service and you're ready for what's coming? And subsequent to Jerry asking that for us all those years ago, pretty much everybody started to follow the schedule of the Center for the Arts. And so what we at the Center for the Arts early on were doing, but even before the Arts Council had kind of reinvigorated itself, we were trying to convince the community that the arts are an important economic driver. These studies, the last two that we've done, this is the most comprehensive with the greatest amount of responses that we had in the community. To us, these are the data that prove what we all feel and believe and think we know, but now we know. And these are the kinds of bits of information then when the Board of Supervisors or the city councils of our 3 cities start to think about how do they invigorate and how do they support and increase the business activity in their communities that they're responsible for. These are the kinds of pieces of information that we want them to know about so that when we go and say, hey, we've got this great project, we've got something for you to support, there's an amazing return on investment. It's not just giving us the money and not expecting anything in return. all of that happens with arts-related activities on a consequential level. And I'll just leave it at that.
John, that's perfect. You did very well. You passed the test. I'm noticing Amber Joe, and also hello Tim, our city manager for Grass Valley at the back, hiding there. I can see you. Thank you for being here. Amber Joe, you and I met for a drink last week at the Holbrook, and it was seriously hilarious. We could hardly find a space to sit. And then London, who's the manager, came up to us and said, "This is all to do with you at the Centre for the Arts. You are the reason this bar is completely filled and cannot find a seat." This is very, very powerful information when our local businesses are actually recognizing that. It's not coming from you, not even from this. It's coming from the business owners. So it was a funny moment because we both looked at each other. Well, it sounds like it's time to pass around and have a little toast. And while we're doing that, do we have any questions? Panelists, I want you to ask really difficult questions of Randy, so that in the 4 years, Amajo, come on up, in the 4 years between now and the next time we create this study, you will have those answers close at hand.
I don't know if this is part of this report, but I would love to know, when we were reopening, the theaters were reopening after COVID, everybody was a different rate. Like Florida was open years before we were open. So I had bands asking, "Can we come?" And I'm like, "We're in California. It's different here." Do you have any information about the economic impact as related to the length of the shutdown for the area? I would imagine maybe Florida has come up to a higher level than maybe California because they got to open first. But that's just me guessing.
Yeah, I've actually been across the Panhandle, the Gulf Coast, and the ocean, South Florida. I would say just them because they, I think, opened up a lot sooner. Are still, if you go and ask an arts organizations there, they'll say, we've got about 2/3 to 3/4 of the audience is back, which honestly almost is what I hear everywhere I go. So folks are coming back to the arts. They're just not coming back really as fast as people expected. Now there's some cohort exceptions. If like it's a music club or something, or someplace that caters to 35 below, a younger cohort, those are doing better. Those are back. Wherever you go, the Nutcracker did well, and a lot of the Broadway show tours have done well. But that's just, I can go, and if I said 2/3 to 3/4 of the attendance is back, everyone's like, yeah, how'd you know? So there's everyone's mileage varies, of course, but it's, yeah.
Well, I will say, just in case you wanted to know, your percentages of local to non-local is exact for the Center for the Arts.
Oh, nice.
We were 67% local last year, and the rest all from outside the area. So it's very
Yeah.
which is interesting.
That's great.
One of the things that comes along with us participating with, in tune with the national study, is that we, having completed this for another 4 years, we also have purchased from Americans for the Arts a customized calculator, which is embedded in our website. I know Gretchen loves this because she comes from a finance world, and you've used this calculator many times. But our individual arts entities, whatever kind of model that they are, can use this customized for Nevada County calculator so that they can generate the exact numbers for their economic impact, so that when you're writing big grant applications, you can use it. You can actually claim these figures. Gretchen, did you want to add anything to that?
I have questions. It's almost similar. It's similar to Amber Joe's. It's similar to Amber Joe's, and that is, did you do a comparison between 2018 and now? As far as we know it decreased, but I'm just kind of curious, what percentage it decreased?
We actually, so I'll tell you the total, we made a bunch of methodological changes this time. So we really are discouraging people to do comparisons. We made this more inclusive. We translated the surveys into 24 languages. We switched economic methodologies. So we're not really encouraging people to make comparisons. That said, I think total economic activity last time was $47 million. This time it's 66. But so I think we've saw growth since then. But one of the things we saw nationally it was people staying a little closer to home but spending more, in terms of attendees, because the audience samples are so high. But we're not really making comparisons between the two studies.
I had exactly the same question, and it concerned me because I thought, well, I mean, as Randy always says, you have to combine data with story. So what's the story? Our community knows that when we last measured the economic impact of the arts here, it was 47 million. I think it was about 845. At that time, it was FTE, jobs. And so the numbers are different. And I began to talk to all of you within our arts organizations. And I think our best guess, apart from the more rigorous methodology that this is now bringing us, AEP6, there are a couple of caveats. And I've described these caveats in the first pages. John and I co-wrote a piece here for you to see. The caveat is that the 2022-23 data that we were capturing, you were still, as arts organizations, in receipt of significant recovery funds, right? So we have to take that into account. We also have to take into account that at that precise time when we were serving our audiences, there was this euphoric sort of outpouring of in-person attendance at all your events. It was so great. That's not the same now. You are not experiencing the same euphoria for your in-person attendees. So your programming is amazing, like it's astounding. Our local programming is exceptional. We all know that. Where are our audiences? And I would say this to all of us locals in the room: keep showing up. Showing up is so important. It's so tempting and so easy to go on our streaming devices and stay at home, stay closer to home. We want to stay close to home, but we want to get out and get into the center. Go to In Concert Sierra and Kat's performances and the Miners Foundry, and we need to just keep buying those tickets and showing up. And we know that you will. Thank you so much. Any questions from the audience?
Hi, Randy. Given that we just went through the pandemic and we saw all the issues around it, did you find that as we came back, did people have new strategies, new ways of engaging with the arts? Did they do something at home? Liza just mentioned streaming. Have we adapted, in other words, to these new ways of doing things?
The organizations, the organizations. Well, we saw during the pandemic a lot of folks did virtual programming. They called up recordings they may have had. They changed their approach and really sort of created a whole new type of presenting of their product. I'm finding those are sort of fading back, and actually people are getting back to the way that they did do their work beforehand. I think responding to sort of the change that's happened in attendance, the season ticket, has been a really struggling thing. I mean, it was struggling before the pandemic, to be honest. But I'm seeing more flexibility for the buyer. So the box office is like, come in, change your seats, change your performance time. Organizations getting together because I don't have time to do 5 theater performances, 3 symphonies, and 2 ballets. So sell me a season package that's got 2 theaters, 1 opera, 1 ballet. So the arts organizations are maybe getting together that way. And also, I think there's some realization that continued realization. We got to bring the product to the people. We just can't sit around and wait for folks to hallow our doors. And so we see arts organizations getting out into the public more, or integrating the arts across the community. One of the things I often ask communities, every city, every county's got advisory boards or commissions. There's one for streets and roads and signage and airports, right? Is there artists and arts organization representation on those? And I'd say in the past, the answer has been usually no, and it's increasingly yes. Because there's an appreciation that we need to create a more culturally vibrant community, right? Where people want to experience art in the built environment, arts in the hospitals, arts in the schools, And and it's the partnerships you talked about. And so there's growing appreciation of that. And so those are, it's still about creating the best art possible. But, those are some of the kind of strategies I'm seeing evolve, and I'm sure that'll come out with the planning work. It used to be 20 years ago, cultural planning, cultural district planning was, how do we get more money for artists? How do we get more money for arts organizations? Really, it's now, how do we build a healthier Nevada County through the arts? And we're all part of that.
But it's also about how do we get more money for the arts.
Well, and you will if because everyone was like, oh yeah, arts are part of my life in all these parts of the community. What do you mean it's at risk of disappearing? So.
Well, any other thoughts? We have one self-professed merchant in the room. Any questions from you? Are you surprised by what you hear? Does it make sense?
Yes, it makes very much sense. At our business, Oxfolk Leatherworks and Shoe Repair, downtown Grass Valley, my son's a crafter, so the history of art and craft in America is very important, and he's practicing that. And we find that the folks coming into our business are coming here from all over the area, down as far as the Bay Area and as far as south of Santa Cruz, to take advantage of the arts here in this community. And we just noticed that they're coming from all over the area and participating in what's happening here in Grass Valley. And I'd like to really say thank you to the people of Grass Valley and Nevada City on the city councils that really stepped forward to make it possible for like the new developments that have happened in each city. That's been we found out that that's been a big pull for our community.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. We do really need to celebrate our cities and our town, our municipalities. The Mill Street Plaza, it's an extraordinary feat. It's incredible. Well done. Lisa, I know that you... well, you set you set the scene. I can see Haven, who is like our guru of public art, and and Sean, I don't think Sean's in the room. He had a conflict, but Sean is our city manager in Nevada City. Great thanks to the city of Nevada City for letting us be here today. You have a question?
Yeah, I have a question.
You don't need a mic either.
For you, I have a question for you.
Please.
We've talked a lot about the role in the community, but how about could you address the issue of individuals and corporations making contributions into the arts community, and particularly, it used to be estate planning, now I guess it's called legacy giving. Could you talk a little bit about the role that might play in supporting the arts?
Well, arts and culture organizations, if you're like nationally, and I don't have the local data here, but the typical arts and culture organization in the United States pulls about 60% of its revenue from earned income, ticket sales, sponsorships, which means the other 40% comes from government, from private sector, from individual contributions. And why is that? Not because they're terrible businesses, but rather as nonprofit organizations, we've got a public purpose, and that's to make our cultural product accessible to a whole community. Cost is a real barrier. And so our contributions as individuals, as businesses, government, we've all got a role in doing what we can to make the arts broadly accessible so we can really capture all of these benefits, from the economic to the mental health ones and everything in between. The majority of governments in this country, the cities and counties, have some level of arts appropriations. Every state's got a state arts agency, so we see, we see government funding the arts. In terms of like legacy and estate giving and that type of thing, there's been in private philanthropy, this is like a whole nother speech, but huge growth in donor advised funds, right? And so people are, one of the challenges is making sure that the arts are part of those donor advised funds. And honestly, if you look at like some of the community foundations do it, but if you look at Fidelities and some of those more private ones, you don't see as much advice on if you want to build a healthy, inclusive, well-rounded community, you've got to include the arts as part of your portfolio. So we actually focus on the private sector as well. Businesses understand the value of the arts. Yes, economic impact. Their big issue really is workforce attraction and retention. How do I get a creative economy workforce in my community? Short answer is those workers, in the innovation economy, they'll tell you, you want me to be creative and innovative in the workplace? I'm a creative and innovative person. I want arts, culture, festivals. I want arts education for my kids in the schools. And that's what's drawing workers. And then that's where the businesses go these days. So we see that in national research from business scholars. So there's actually a lot of aspects to that question. Some things are working well. Some things we still got a lot of work to do on.
So you're talking about arts as a tradable sector.
Tradable.
Okay, over to you, Mr. ERC man, and then we're going to do a toast to the arts.
So we speak about the tradable sectors versus the service sectors. Tradable are where we export products and services, import wealth. The arts imports the wealth from outside in here. So we don't export to it, but it comes to us. And those dollars tend back to the multiplier effect. Dollars from the outside tend to have a higher multiplier effect than the dollars from inside the community.
So even though a restaurant, when we go to a restaurant, the restaurant itself may not be, the restaurant industry may not be a tradable sector, but it becomes tradable when the arts brings people to the table. So for me, that's a very interesting thing, since Kimberly and I sit on the Leadership Council for California Jobs First, and my role is to advocate for some of those funds to go to the arts. So we're in conversation about this a